Hey guys! Tonight we journey to the golden sands of 14th century West Africa, deep in the heart of the Mali Empire, a place where the sun bakes the earth into endless ochre and great caravans shimmer like moving treasure chests across the horizon. You're standing barefoot on sun-warmed soil. The air smells faintly of salt, dried dates, and camel fur. Around you, the royal courtyard bustles with quiet but determined energy. Silk tents flap lazily in the heat. Couriers hurry past, their footsteps muffled by dust, while camels grumble under towering loads of gold, textiles, and spices. You, dear listener, are about to join a royal caravan headed north across the Sahara. Yes, you. You've been conscripted into service for reasons that probably involve a bureaucratic mix-up, or maybe you just said yes too enthusiastically at the wrong dinner. Either way, congratulations, you're on the team. You'll be walking, yes, walking, alongside merchants, guards, scribes, camel drivers, cooks, and the all-important drummers who somehow know how to turn an empire's logistics into rhythm. You probably won't survive this without sore legs, intense sunburn, and at least one awkward run-in with a scorpion. But don't worry, no one really expects you to carry much. Just your own blanket, your food bowl, and maybe a few favors owed to the drummer who remembered to pack honey. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere far away, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your day at Niani, the imperial capital of Mali, nestled beside the slow curve of the Niger River. It's early morning. The sun hasn't quite burned the haze from the sky, and everything feels just a little soft around the edges, like a watercolor still drying. Palatial mud brick buildings stretch out like termite mounds, dressed for a festival, adorned with carved wooden beams and bright banners dyed with crushed flowers and rust. You're standing barefoot on sun-warmed soil. The air smells faintly of salt, dried dates, and camel fur. Around you, the royal courtyard bustles with quiet but determined energy. Silk tents flap lazily in the heat. Couriers hurry past, their footsteps muffled by dust, while camels grumble under towering loads of gold, textiles, and spices. You, dear listener, are about to join a royal caravan headed north across the Sahara. Yes, you. You've been conscripted into service for reasons that probably involve a bureaucratic mix-up, or maybe you just said yes too enthusiastically at the wrong dinner. Either way, congratulations, you're on the team. You'll be walking, yes, walking, alongside merchants, guards, scribes, camel drivers, cooks, and the all-important drummers who somehow know how to turn an empire's logistics into rhythm. You probably won't survive this without sore legs, intense sunburn, and at least one awkward run-in with a scorpion. But don't worry, no one really expects you to carry much. Just your own blanket, your food bowl, and maybe a few favors owed to the drummer who remembered to pack honey. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere far away, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your day at Niani, the imperial capital of Mali, nestled beside the slow curve of the Niger River. It's early morning. The sun hasn't quite burned the haze from the sky, and everything feels just a little soft around the edges, like a watercolor still drying. Palatial mud brick buildings stretch out like termite mounds, dressed for a festival, adorned with carved wooden beams and bright banners dyed with crushed flowers and rust. You're standing before the camel cow burrow, of vast open fields where dozens of herdsmen have brought their best beasts for the Sultan's caravan. From all over the empire, camels are gathered to join the treacherous journey across the Sahara. You pass couriers in embroidered robes, their hands stained from ink and indigo. The Sultan's inner circle is gathering for one last blessing before the royal caravan sets off. At the center, the emir himself stands beneath a canopy woven with copper thread. He's older than you imagined, his beard neatly dyed, red with henna, his eyes sharp even beneath layers of kohl. He doesn't acknowledge you directly, of course. You're not quite high enough in the food chain to earn a nod, but the presence of such grandeur feels oddly comforting, like watching a very fancy grandfather supervise his very large backyard party. The caravan is no mere merchant trip. It's a royal announcement on the move. Every few years, the court sends these expeditions out not just to trade, but to remind the world who's in charge. Gold dust packed in leather bags, cola nuts from the southern forests, and books copied in Arabic script from the court's own scholars. But most importantly, the people. Ambassadors, griots, translators, drummers, and cooks, all carefully selected to represent the empire's civility, power, and musical taste. And it's not just about where you're going, it's how you go. See, the Malians didn't believe in silent travel. No eerie wagon wheel creaks and awkward camel farts on this trip, though, spoiler alert, there will still be plenty of both. Instead, the empire relied on drums, big ones, tall ones, carved from hollowed wood and stretched with hide, painted with symbols to mark each drummer's family and style. These drums speak, not metaphorically, literally. The languages of the region, like Mande, are tonal, meaning you can mimic actual sentences using pitch and rhythm. So a drum doesn't just say, "danger ahead." It says, "beware the red scarf bandits near the third acacia tree past the bend." You pass a group of drummers seated beneath a tree, their hands gently thumping in warm-up. One looks up and offers you a lopsided smile. His drum is taller than you are and painted with a crocodile. He pats the surface twice, as if to say, "better keep up, new kid." Historians still argue whether the empire used fixed drum codes for each type of message or whether the talking drum was more improvisational, like jazz on a desert breeze. But either way, you'd better hope someone on your team knows how to interpret it. Otherwise, you might just confuse "we're being followed" with "bring more tamarind." The camels arrive next, each taller than your hopes and more ornery than your aunt at a wedding where they ran out of rice. Their cargo is tied with colorful rope and capped with straw mats to shield it from sun. One particularly hairy camel turns its head to examine you. You stare back. You lose. You always lose camel contests. The sun climbs. The call to prayer echoes from the city walls, mingling with the creak of wooden wheels and the occasional shouting match about whose turn it was to pack the pepper sacks. Just as you're starting to sweat through your clothes, a sudden series of drum beats ripple through the camp. Short, snappy, unmistakable. It's time. The Sultan lifts his hand, the caravan leader bows low, and a final blessing is chanted by the court's imam. You can't understand all the words, but you catch the gist. May your path be safe, may your food stay warm, may your camel behave. The drummers line up at the front, flanked by banners and colorfully dressed griots who will narrate the journey along the way. Mostly truthfully, if not entirely. One begins a beat, slow and deep, like a heart just waking up. Another answers from the rear. It's not loud, not yet. It's just enough to make your ribs vibrate. The message it carries is something like, "We are moving. We are many. We are Mali." And so you take your first step. The rhythm guides you, soft and unhurried. You fall into the pace easily, your feet matching the gentle pulse of the drums. The dust rises with every step, but no one complains.
The drummer with the crocodile motif looks back once, catches your eye, and grins. You're walking now, but wait until you dream in rhythm.
The road out of Niani doesn't really start so much as fade. The city's wide walkways gently erode into dirt trails, which dissolve further into packed sand scattered with dry grass and stubborn pebbles. There are no signs, no neat mile markers, no "you are here" maps. Instead, your path is drawn across the land by memory, rhythm, and the soft logic of footsteps that have pressed this way 1,000 times before. You'd think a royal caravan would travel in a tight, organized column, like a parade with gold-plated camels and synchronized drummers. But no, it's more like a long, swaying ribbon of humanity stretched across the earth. Families riding donkeys, traders counting beads, drummers tapping out updates, and the occasional boy sprinting ahead just to see if his legs can outrun the sun. To your left, the Niger River gleams like polished bronze. To your right, baobab trees lean like sleepy giants, their branches heavy with dry pods and birds' nests. The air is warm and thick with the smells of dust, sweat, goat cheese, and the occasional puff of incense smuggled from some distant coastal market. You swat at a fly, it dodges gracefully, and returns for another round. You might ask, how do they know where to go? Well, here's the trick. The roads of the Mali Empire weren't roads at all. They were remembered. Routes were passed down orally by generations of merchants and desert guides, each one trained to recall not just direction, but detail. That boulder shaped like a lion near the edge of the Jenne Dunes, the acacia grove that smells like mint at dawn, the patch of sand that swallows wagon wheels for sport. And most crucially, the sound. That's where the drums come in. Every major stop along the trans-Saharan route had its own signature rhythm, a musical ID badge of sorts. When a caravan was approaching, its lead drummers would begin tapping out the destination's rhythm as they neared, like humming a hometown tune to announce their arrival. Then, a listening post, maybe a tiny village, a watch station, or a single goat herder who'd drawn the short straw, would hear the beat and send it onward. Like ripples in a pond, the message would bounce from outpost to outpost, each drummer copying the rhythm and passing it on down the line. Within hours, a town hundreds of miles ahead might already be preparing firewood and couscous, knowing that guests were coming. Possibly 50 of them, possibly 500, possibly with the pet monkey. Historians still argue whether these rhythmic relays were organized centrally by the state or just evolved informally through trade communities. Some believe the government maintained official drumming posts, like Pony Express stations, but noisier. Others say it was more ad hoc, relying on local musicians who took it upon themselves to be the Spotify of the savannah. You pause briefly to adjust the wrap of your turban. The desert sun is creeping higher now, and your neck feels like a baked yam. The drummers are still ahead, keeping a steady beat that you feel more than you hear. It's comforting, like being rocked in a hammock made of sound. Then something peculiar, a faint rhythm echoing from somewhere beyond the hills. The caravan slows. People cup hands to their ears. The beat is slow, methodical, almost cautious. The caravan commander steps forward, nods to his lead drummer, and receives a swift reply. 3 sharp notes, followed by a pause, the same as echoed back from the hill. A reply. You're being watched, welcomed, or warned. It's not always clear. That's part of the fun. See, the talking drums could do more than announce locations. They could express emotion, urgency, even sarcasm. A light, teasing rhythm might mean, "You're late, again." A sharper one could signal danger. And a muddled, clumsy sequence? That was usually a kid messing around, which earned him a swift smack from someone's sandal. And the language?
Mande drums didn't use simple beeps and boops. They mirrored actual speech patterns, tones, syllables, even inflection. The drum phrases sounded like people talking. If you knew the local dialect, you could understand what the drum was saying. And if you didn't, well, you mostly hoped it wasn't announcing your camel had eaten someone's tent. You wonder, how far can these sounds travel? Quite far, it turns out. Drumming could be heard up to 5 miles in the right terrain, sometimes even more if the wind cooperated and no one in the next village was in the middle of a loud goat dispute. It wasn't perfect, of course. Mountains muffled sound, rain softened drum skins. Sometimes a well-meant message about needing water might arrive as the camel fell in the mango pit. Still, it worked well enough that the system endured for centuries, stretching from the Senegal River to the southern edge of the Sahara. It connected gold traders, scholars, salt miners, and shepherds. It was the pulse of an empire. You pass a small cluster of travelers heading the opposite direction, a lean man in indigo robes, a donkey loaded with baskets, and 2 women balancing ceramic jugs on their heads. One of the women is humming a drum rhythm softly to herself. You recognize it. It's the pattern for the next watering station. Looks like you're about 4 hours away, assuming the camels don't stage another dramatic protest. The road winds upward slightly. You crest a sandy rise and pause to look back. Niani is already gone, swallowed by distance and heat shimmer. But you don't feel lost. You feel carried. The rhythm is still there, in your ears, in your feet, in your ribs. And just like that, the desert begins to welcome you. The silence isn't really silence. It's full of layers, insect hums, the breath of wind through dry grass, the crunch of footsteps on sand, the occasional birch of a tired camel. And beneath it all, steady and constant, the heartbeat of the drum. Boom, pause. Boom, boom, pause. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the rhythm bouncing ahead of you like a message in a bottle, racing toward a city you haven't yet seen. A rhythm that says, "We are moving. We are many. We are not lost." The sun is just past its high point now, flattening shadows into thin puddles around your feet. Your turban is damp at the temples, and the soles of your sandals are absorbing so much heat you half suspect they're trying to cook your toes from below. Still, the caravan pushes forward, slow, steady, rhythmic. And now, you start to notice something strange in the distance. Not a figure, not a building, a sound. At first, it's just a soft, repeating thud. 2 beats, a pause, then a flourish that makes your ears perk up. It's not your caravan's drummer. It's coming from the horizon, maybe from that distant hill where the acacia trees crouch low like tired dancers. The pattern is clear, unmistakable. It's someone talking. You've reached the range of the talking drums. Now, you might think drums can't talk. Drums go boom, maybe boom boom, but certainly not, "Hey, watch out for the water buffalo near the bend." But the West African talking drum is a very special creature. In Mali, it's called the tamani, or sometimes the talking log, a deceptively simple-looking instrument shaped like an hourglass or a hollowed-out stump. But don't be fooled. In the right hands, this drum speaks full sentences. And not just any sentences, tonal ones. See, the Mande languages and others like them in the region aren't just about the words themselves. They're about how you say them. A high pitch might mean tree, while a low pitch with the same consonants might mean fire. This tonal system makes it possible for a drum to mimic human speech patterns using only pitch and rhythm. And so you hear it, a message tapped across distance. It might mean the royal caravan is 2 leagues away, or dinner is being prepared, if you're the lucky sort, or perhaps the all-too-common, The camel knocked over the water jug again. Historians still argue whether each village had a strict drumming code or whether messages were crafted on the fly by expert drummers with encyclopedic memories. But regardless of the system, the effect is mesmerizing. An empire speaking to itself across hills, valleys, and deserts without wires, radios, or even a single bird willing to carry a note. You crest a gentle slope and see the drummer. He's seated beneath a twisted acacia tree, a small shelter of reeds and cloth shielding him from the sun. His drum is propped between his legs, and his hands move like fluttering leaves, gentle, precise, expressive. His fingers roll and tap across the drumhead, creating pulses that rise and fall like conversation. Every few phrases, he pauses, listening for a reply. Nearby, a child sits cross-legged, watching silently, probably trying to learn. Drumming is a respected profession here, equal parts musician, messenger, and minor magician. No royal caravan would dare set off without its full complement of rhythm makers. You pass close enough to see the detail etched into the side of his drum. Geometric lines, painted circles, maybe a family crest. He glances up as you pass, then resumes his rhythm, adjusting the pitch with the squeeze of a chord or the shift of his elbow. Some drums are tuned mid-performance, much like singers adjusting their breath. It's performance and transmission in one. In the caravan, your lead drummer taps out a response. A few clipped phrases that echo his rhythm, a greeting, an update, maybe even a little inside joke about how many sandals you've already worn through. The two rhythms overlap, laugh, then part ways like friends on different errands. You're not surprised. This world is made of patterns, walking patterns, trade patterns, and above all, sound patterns. A merchant might remember a journey not by what he saw, but by the beats he heard along the way. Oh yes, the town after the one that used the zigzag rhythm with that fancy handclap. In fact, some archaeologists suggest that these drumming networks were as critical to trade as the caravans themselves, not just for messages, but for pacing, navigation, and morale. Imagine walking hundreds of miles without a playlist. Now imagine your playlist is customized, updated live, and woven with the poetry of your own language. Spotify who? And this isn't a lone case. Other West African cultures use similar systems, some with variations like slit drums or log drums carved with channels to produce different tones. Some anthropologists believe you could once follow a path across thousands of miles by sound alone, like tuning into different local radio stations as you moved through invisible borders. The sound fades behind you now, absorbed into the vast hush of the plain. Up ahead, the land flattens. The caravan regroups for a rest stop near a well. It's not much, just a stony ring around a hole that smells faintly of minerals and goat, but the water is cold and welcome. You drink, splash your face, let your limbs sigh into the shade of a canvas lean-to. Around you, drummers stretch their arms. Some sit cross-legged and begin improvising light rhythms for fun. You recognize the difference. These are not messages. These are musical games. One drummer starts a pattern, the next answers in mirror form. Then someone interrupts with a ridiculous tempo and laughter ripples through the group. It's like watching chess, but louder and with more foot tapping. A small audience gathers. Traders, guards, cooks, even a goat or two. You catch the rhythm. You start swaying a little. It's hard not to. Even the camels seem calmer now. One of the older drummers, gray-bearded and sun-browned, taps the rim of his drum in a way that sounds almost like clapping rain. He sees you watching and grins. "Do you know this one?" he asks. You shake your head. He laughs. "Good. I made it up 5 minutes ago." Another beat begins. A low, looping pattern. It sounds like footsteps on packed earth. Like your own. The rhythm of someone walking not toward something, but with something. The caravan. The road. The empire.
Back on the trail, the sun has begun its slow descent, throwing long shadows ahead of you like the arms of sleeping giants. The air feels drier now, less like a hot blanket and more like a warm exhale. The caravan moves on, this time with less chatter and more rhythm. It's the kind of hour where everyone slips into their own thoughts, their own quiet pace. Even the camels seem contemplative, though that may just be their usual look of mild disdain. Near the front of the procession walks the caravan commander, a man named Yoro, with a voice like cracked leather and a beard braided so tightly it could probably deflect arrows. Yoro isn't flashy. He doesn't shout, doesn't strut. But when he moves, others follow, and when he speaks, the drums cause. Yoro is responsible for everything: the gold, the guards, the spices, the schedules, and naturally the drummers. Before the caravan ever left Niani, he spent weeks preparing. It wasn't enough to simply load the camels and set off. Oh no. Every single item had to be weighed, documented, and balanced, not just physically, but socially. Gold dust, for instance, must be packed in sealed leather pouches. But those pouches can't sit next to salt blocks because the salt draws in moisture, which risks cracking the seams. And neither can sit near the indigo dye bundles because someone once made that mistake and turned 10 bags of coin gold into a very fashionable shade of purple. Historians still argue whether caravan leaders like Yoro were drawn from the military or the nobility, or if they were a mix of both. What's clear is that their role was part commander, part accountant, part event planner, and part weather psychic. You've just begun to appreciate this complexity when Yoro raises a hand, calling the caravan to a gentle stop. You glance around. There's no danger, no commotion, just a ripple of calm. Yoro nods toward a knot of drummers at the rear of the caravan, then to the forward group. Without speaking, the message is clear. Drum check. It's not dramatic. There's no fanfare. One by one, each drummer lifts their instrument, tests its skin, tightens cords, adjusts pegs. They aren't just making sure the drums can play, they're making sure they can speak. Because the desert doesn't care about your set list if your message can't carry. Some drums have stretched in the heat. Others absorbed too much moisture during last night's brief humidity spike. One younger drummer gently taps and frowns, then fetches a coal pan to warm and tighten the skin. Your eyes drift across the caravan, where packs are checked, ropes are retied, and water skins topped off. This isn't a delay. It's an essential tune-up, as routine as brushing teeth if brushing teeth involved 30 people and a 2-hour logistics conference. And then there's the paperwork. Well, pre-paperwork. Caravans in 14th century Mali didn't carry clipboards, obviously, but they did carry scribes, and those scribes kept ledgers, not on parchment, but often on leather, bark, or clay tablets. You pass one now, a slim man with ink-stained fingers and a forehead so furrowed you suspect he's writing a play in his head while tallying lentils. He's reciting inventories softly to himself. 4 boats of indigo, 6 goat hides, 32 jars of honeyed cola. Nearby, the cooks have begun unpacking flat stones to bake the next meal. Flatbread likely, with salted butter and maybe a splash of ground baobab fruit if someone's in a festive mood. And among it all, the drummers. Yoro gestures to Bund again. This time it's the official signal, the departure rhythm. You hear it build like a sigh. 3 beats, pause. 2 beats, pause, then a flourish. It's not music, it's movement. A call to gather your pack, finish your bread, and return to formation. But it's more than that. It's language. One of the drummers, a wiry woman named Kile, starts the rhythm. She doesn't look like much at first glance. Lean frame, loose scarf, eyes sharp as acacia thorns. But when she plays, the desert listens. Her hands don't just strike the drum, they translate. You watch as her fingers roll, flutter, strike. You feel the message in your chest before it even reaches your ears.
And yes, she's drumming "It's time to move," but there's more tucked inside those beats. There's a warning to keep your pace gentle, a note about the terrain ahead, rocky and dry, and maybe, just maybe, a playful jab at the camel who knocked over the spice jar earlier. Kile has a sense of humor like that. The caravan begins to shift. Camels grunt, leather straps creak, people murmur thanks to the cooks and scribes. You adjust your sash, tighten your sandals, and fall into step. You're starting to see how all this fits together. The commander leads, the scribes remember, the cooks nourish, and the drummers connect. Without them, the caravan is just a crowd of travelers. With them, it's a moving sentence in the story of an empire. It's no surprise that drummers were often trained from childhood. Some belonged to hereditary musical guilds, others were orphans adopted by drum families. Yes, that was a thing. You hear one of the older players telling a story, something about being raised by his grandmother and a goatskin drum named Fatima. You're not sure if he's joking. He might not be. Up ahead, the trail bends into a narrow ravine carved by centuries of wind and stubborn flood. The heat clings to the rocks like old gossip. The drummers pick up their tempo slightly, not for danger, but to prepare the rhythm for echo. And there it is, one of the most satisfying quirks of the journey. The echo game. As you walk through the narrow pass, the drum beats bounce back at you from the rock walls, warped slightly, like hearing your own footsteps in a dream. Some drummers tweak their beats on purpose here, bending rhythms to create echoes that mimic new messages. Others just enjoy hearing the land sing back. You smile as the rhythm bounces between stones. Boom, 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 bop, bop. It's the sound of movement. The sound of 1,000 feet guided by one voice. The sound of an empire's heartbeat, pulsing across dust and stone. You're not entirely sure how long you've been walking when the first camel stops dead in its tracks and refuses to budge. There's no drama at first, just a subtle, almost philosophical refusal to participate. 1 second it's moving, the next it's rooted to the earth like a sandy monument to passive resistance. The caravan halts behind it. Murmurs ripple backward. Yoro sighs audibly. A handler tries coaxing the beast forward with a gentle tug of the reins and a few affectionate insults in Bambara. The camel chews, blinks, and declines the invitation. And then, because drama apparently travels in herds, another camel joins the sit-in. Then a third. Somewhere behind you, someone mutters, "Not again." This, dear listener, is camel drama, and it is extremely real. While Mali's royal caravans were elegant in theory, in practice they depended on the whims of some of the most spectacularly irritable creatures on the planet. Tall, furry, and full of opinions, camels in the 14th century were the backbone of long-distance trade, but only when they felt like it. Historians still argue whether Mali's camel handlers used specific calming techniques passed down through generations, or if they just yelled encouraging things while ducking spit. What we do know is that camel tantrums were a regular, if frustrating, part of the journey. As the delay stretches on, the drummers step in, not with scoldings or fanfare, but with rhythm. They begin a low, rolling pattern, slow, gentle, coaxing. It's not a message to other villages, it's a message for the animals, a subtle cue that the caravan is still moving, still organized, still home. Some scholars think these camel rhythms weren't just cultural. There's speculation they affected the animals' stress levels directly. Calmer beats, calmer beasts. And sure enough, after a few moments, the lead camel makes a slow, theatrical grunt, shifts its weight, and resumes walking. The others follow. Even one flicks its tail as if to say, "I chose to move, thank you very much." Crisis averted. Now that the rhythm is flowing again, you settle into the caravan's stride once more. Each footstep is cushioned by packed sand, your limbs moving to the same slow beat as the rest of the group. The sky has shifted to a deeper blue, and the horizon blurs slightly with rising heat waves. You're thirsty, but not dangerously so. Tired, but rhythmically tired. It's a surprisingly satisfying kind of fatigue. The landscape around you begins to change. The flat savanna is giving way to scattered brush and gently rising dunes. Clumps of dry grass wave lazily in the breeze. You spot a few wild donkeys in the distance, watching your procession like disapproving locals. One flicks its ear and turns away. Rude. And then you hear it. Another drumbeat, this one farther away, slower, more deliberate. It comes from a rest post up ahead, one of the many way stations scattered across the empire's trade routes. Each post has its own rhythm, its own tempo and flair. It's how caravans know who's on the road, how far ahead they are, and whether the next stop has warm stew or just a bucket of lukewarm water. This upcoming station is known among the drummers as the lazy beat. No one really knows why. Maybe the local drummer just prefers a slower style, or maybe it's a joke about the post's famously unenthusiastic cook. Either way, the rhythm tells you that you're about 30 minutes out from a shaded clearing and possibly a pot of millet stew. The caravan responds in kind. Your drummers answer with a recognition phrase, a polite, "We're coming through," that also signals the size and type of your caravan. It's not unlike calling ahead to a restaurant. Yes, party of 75, 2 with food allergies, 1 camel with trust issues. As you near the station, you spot the drummer. He's older, draped in red cloth, his drum cradled on a low stool. He watches your approach with a quiet nod, his fingers tapping a lazy rhythm that rolls like waves on a lake. The station itself is modest, a small hut made from woven reeds, a few clay jugs of water, and a shaded resting circle with rocks arranged in a rough spiral. You collapse gratefully onto one of them, letting the shade soak into your bones. Nearby, a cook is stirring a pot. The scent wafts over. Onion, tamarind, maybe a dash of fermented locust bean. You've never been so happy to smell something slightly weird and savory. While the caravan rests, the drummers gather to compare notes. Literally. They talk about rhythm patterns, wind conditions, the feel of the drums, and, of course, the legendary camel sit-down of 40 minutes ago. Kelly rolls her eyes and starts mimicking the lazy beat of the station drummer, drawing laughs from the group. And just when you think things are calming down, one of the younger drummers starts a rapid pattern, a joke rhythm that translates roughly to, "Yoro sandals are too tight." It gets a good chuckle. Even Yoro allows a tiny smirk before returning to his logbook. Drumming, you realize, isn't just the language, it's a culture. A way to communicate messages, yes, but also personality, humor, complaint, and joy. Some scholars believe these rhythms weren't written down because they couldn't be, not fully. They lived in the body, in the fingers, in the breath between beats. That's why drummers often trained from childhood, so they could speak a language that was half music, half thought. As you sip from a clay cup of warmish water, Kelly sits beside you. She drums gently on her thighs, eyes half closed. "Not bad for your first real day," she says. You nod, too tired to respond with anything clever. She taps a beat. Boom, bop, bop, tap. Pause. "What's that one mean?" you ask. She grins. "That's the rhythm for, don't fall asleep yet, we still got miles to go." And just like that, the drums begin again. The moment you stand again, your legs groan like an old wooden gate. The shaded rest stop had been a small mercy. Stone seating, millet stew, rhythmic banter.
But now, with the sun arcing into its most unforgiving hours, the caravan sets off again under an atmosphere that feels just a little more toasty. Your feet crunch over dry pebbles and grit. Every step is deliberate, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You find yourself matching the beat of the lead drum without even realizing it. Boom, step, tap, tap, step. The heat hangs like a damp blanket over your shoulders, and your mind begins to drift in and out of focus. But then something peculiar catches your eye. Far ahead, in the wavering shimmer of heat, you spot what looks like a towering object. Too slim to be a tree, too still to be a person. As the caravan gets closer, the shape resolves. A signal post. Tall, carved from a single trunk of hardwood. It's wrapped in bits of cloth, feathers, and faded dye. Yora raises a hand. The caravan slows. "Message post," he says simply. "Old one. Pre-imperial style." The drummers gather around it, reading it like a notice board. Except instead of words, it's wrapped in symbol. Braids of grass, shells, paint patterns, and bones. Scholars still argue whether these coded poles were purely visual messages or if they were meant to be interpreted in tandem with local drum patterns. Today, this post tells a simple message. Flooded crossing ahead, detour to the east. You glance at the terrain. It all looks bone dry. But Euro trusts the message, and so does everyone else. You veer east. This system of visual beat messaging was just one of the ingenious methods used across 14th century Mali to keep massive caravans running with minimal direct communication. You didn't need a postal service when every village had a drum, every drummer knew the beat code, and the landscape itself whispered warnings through carved wood and woven grass. The detour takes you past a narrow gorge where a small stream trickles through. Not exactly a flood, but enough mud to appreciate the warning. And then, Kele motions for you to listen. Far in the distance, faint but clear, you hear another drum, a pattern of 4 low beats, spaced evenly, the all-clear signal, broadcast by a tiny village whose name you'll never learn. They've been listening, watching, letting the network know the road is open again. It's like someone in the dark across a canyon waving back. As you keep walking, Yoro explains something else. He says, "You know what's weird? This whole system, we treat it like it's ours, like it started with the empire. But it didn't." He's right. The drum beat messaging system of West Africa didn't begin with the Mali Empire. It predates it. Variations of it existed in earlier societies, perhaps even in Ghana or the Knot culture long before. It evolved organically, not from royal decree, but from necessity. People needed to talk, and sound carried better than feet. And this is where things get strange. There are legends, half whispers really, of certain master rhythms that only a handful of drummers knew. Patterns that could travel for miles, relayed accurately across vast terrains with zero distortion. Scholars still debate whether that's possible. After all, the further a sound travels, the more it changes. Yet records from early Arab travelers, like Ibn Battuta, that endlessly curious visitor, mention drum communications used by local messengers that seemed almost magical in their speed. Did they exaggerate? Maybe. But consider this. Some rhythms weren't just about information. They were about tone, intent, urgency. A pattern that says bandits is useful. A variation that says but not serious is even more useful. The ability to convey emotion through a drum line, that's not just logistics, that's art. You walk on, mulling that over. The sun begins to lower just a bit, slanting the light to that honeyed angle where everything looks vaguely cinematic. Shadows stretch long. You pass a few dry shrubs, one of which contains a large, surprisingly unfazed lizard. He blinks at you once, then closes his eyes, clearly judging your life choices. The landscape widens again,
In the distance, a large village, its reddish walls glowing in the afternoon sun. Drums sound from within. But these aren't message beats. These are welcome rhythms, playful, almost melodic, like someone humming a greeting. The village drummer has seen your caravan crest the rise, and now he's calling out a song of arrival. Kelly responds with a rhythmic flourish, adding a cheeky little flip at the end. It translates roughly to, "We're tired, we smell, but we brought money." The caravan winds through the gates. Inside, villagers are gathering to watch the procession enter. Children dart between carts, chickens scatter. Somewhere, a goat lets out a dramatic wail because, of course, it does. Yoro shakes hands with the village headman, a wiry man with a beard that seems longer than his entire arm. They talk logistics, how long you'll stay, what goods can be exchanged, whether the local well is still acting temperamental. Meanwhile, you and Kelly help unload a few essentials: water jars, dried fish, a sack of something grainy. The local drummer comes over and offers you a gourd of baobab juice. It's tart, a little gritty, but you're too thirsty to care. That night, under a sky littered with stars, the drummers gather again. But this time, it's not about messages, it's music. They play for the village, for the animals, for the cracked ground and the still air, and the wide watching moon. They play rhythms that don't mean anything, but still feel like something: joy, relief, tired feet, and full bellies. And when Kelly hands you a small drum, just to practice one, nothing fancy, you play along. Poorly. Absolutely terribly. But she doesn't laugh. She just nods. Not bad, for someone who didn't even know what a goat bait was 2 days ago. And there it is again. Beat by beat, note by note, you're becoming part of the rhythm.
You wake to the smell of something unfamiliar but promising, rich, earthy, with a sharp note that tickles your nose. A woman near the fire stirs a pot with the calm expertise of someone who's done it every day for 50 years. Euro is already up, sipping from a wooden cup, and Kelly is oiling her drum skin with a smear of shea butter, humming quietly to herself. Breakfast is a thick millet porridge, salty and just a bit smoky from the fire. You eat in silence while around you, the village begins to buzz with the day's quiet activities. No shouting, no frantic rush, just the slow, deliberate motions of people who understand that time isn't something you race, it's something you move with. As the sun climbs, so does the pace. Your caravan isn't the only group on the move today. Two smaller ones trickle in through different gates, their own cargo covered in hides or pottery. Their drummers trading quick exchanges like old friends bumping into each other at the world's slowest market. Yoro leans toward you, whispering like he's about to spill royal secrets. This is one of the key nodes, junction point for 4 trade routes. That's why they keep a chief drummer here. You glance toward a raised wooden platform near the village center. There, sitting cross-legged with the posture of a cat that owns the entire continent, is a man surrounded by drums of different shapes and sizes. Some are tall and elegant, others squat and battered. Each one is tuned for a different range, and each one carries a different part of the empire's language. You half expect him to speak in Morse code. Instead, he closes his eyes and lets his fingers speak. Thump, tap tap, pause, boom. A message. You look to Yoro. Inventory report. Caravan from the east. 7 camels, mostly cloth and dried meat. One of the camels has a limp. You blink. He got all that from those beats? Yoro shrugs. That's just the summary. The full version has 15 lines. It hits you then, these aren't just messengers, they're archivists. Every drum beat is data, every rhythm a record. And unlike scribes with ink and parchment, these men and women preserve history through vibration and memory. Scholars still debate whether these oral drum codes could be considered a language in the strict linguistic sense. But even today, communities across West Africa maintain drum-based communication as a cultural tradition. And the code? It's not universal.
Every region, even every village, might have its own rhythm dialect. What sounds like safe passage to one drummer could mean broken axle to another. That's why skilled caravan drummers like Kelly had to study rhythms like you might study foreign languages, memorizing not just beats, but accents. Back in the village square, the chief drummer pauses. He drums again, this time a simple query. Any danger on the northern route? A pause. Then from the hills, a faint answer. No signs of threat. Water is clean. Go well. You glance around, expecting someone with binoculars or a signal flag. Nope, just the wind, the air, and the deep quiet of a continent that knows how to speak without speaking. The chief drummer nods, satisfied. He scratches his beard with the same fingers that just told a story across 4 valleys, then begins a slower rhythm, the farewell beat. Your caravan will move soon. Packing up again feels less like a chore and more like a ritual. Kelly wraps her drum with cloth that smells faintly of herbs. Yorol double-checks the supply count, clicking his tongue in that stern but not really way that means he's not mad, just perpetually grumpy. And you? You just try not to lose your gourd of water this time. Before you go, the village headman offers a small gift, a carved pendant in the shape of a baobab seed. For safety and for memory, let it rattle when you walk. As the caravan files out, the villagers line the path, some waving, others just watching. A young girl with a crooked grin mimics a drumbeat with her hands. Tap, tap, pause, tap. You wave back. Now the terrain begins to change. The road rises, cutting through rockier ground, dotted with twisted trees and stubby grass. A light breeze picks up, and for the first time in days, you feel genuinely cool. Not cold, mind you, that would be too much to hope for, but pleasantly, surprisingly, not baking alive. The kind of temperature that says, don't get used to this. As you walk, Kelly starts humming a rhythm under her breath. It's not a message, just a tune, a traveling rhythm, a beat to match the pace of your feet and the sway of the camels. Her voice is low, half singing, half whispering, like she's not performing, but remembering. You join in, off-key, but enthusiastic. Is this a real song? She says, it's from Gal. We used to sing it when crossing rivers. You're nowhere near a river, but the rhythm helps. Step, step, beat, step. Then, boom. A single drum beat echoes from somewhere behind you. Not sharp, not urgent, just unexpected. The caravan stops. Everyone freezes. Yorol listens closely. His brow furrows. Repeat it, he mutters to no one. The beat comes again. This time, Kelly drums a short response. Silence. Then, boom, boom, tap, tap, tap. Kelly exhales. False alarm. Trader boy playing with the drum. You glance back and spot a sheepish teenager trying very hard to look innocent. One of the older drummers gives him a gentle cuff on the head and a lesson he probably won't forget. Because in this empire, playing the wrong beat could lead to a caravan turning around, a village evacuating, or, in extreme cases, a war starting 2 weeks early. Drums carry power, authority, truth. But also, drums carry you. Through forest, plain, dust, wind, and fading light, through stories you don't yet understand. The road climbs higher now. The horizon opens. Somewhere, in the distance, you hear it again. A rhythm. Confident. Fluid. In perfect time with your feet. You smile. It's not just your caravan anymore. It's part of the rhythm of the empire.
You crest a low ridge just after midday, and there it is, the Red Road. It's not a literal road, not a paved one anyway, but the dust here is fine, ochre-colored, and so dry it coats everything like flour. It clings to your ankles, your eyelashes, the folds of your tunic, and gives your lips a faintly spicy tang. Yoro calls it the Highway of Iron, a stretch of packed dirt so heavily trafficked by merchant caravans, soldiers, pilgrims, and messengers that even the trees have bowed out of the way. You step into it and suddenly you understand why it earned that name. The ground vibrates faintly underfoot, not with motion but with memory. Hundreds of years of footsteps, hooves, and drums pressed into the earth. Even your breath feels measured now, as if syncing to a rhythm you didn't realize was playing. 4 caravans passed this way in the last week, Yoro mutters, scanning the faded tracks like an archaeologist reading tea leaves. 2 southbound, 1 from the salt flats, 1 military, I'd wager. You're about to ask why when he cuts you off. Boot tread, spaced evenly, small fire pits, and they pooped in neat rows. There's a pause. Wait, they what? Yoro gives you a look. Military discipline, friend. You decide not to ask any further. As the caravan snakes down the path, you notice the faint outlines of long-gone way stations. Sunken wells, broken cairns, the remains of windbreak shelters shaped like half-buried spoons. Some are no longer used, but still honored. Kayleigh taps her drum once, twice, then a low rattle, a recognition beat for the ancestors. Even the camels seem to step more quietly past these places. The road widens, briefly, where 2 routes converge, a crossroads. Here, an old drum post stands, tall, weather-warped, empty. This one's dead, Kayleigh says. The drummer here retired last season. No apprentice. It happens. She doesn't say it's sad, but it is. A silent drum is like a closed book. Do you miss it when there's no sound? You ask. She doesn't answer right away, just touches the hollow of her drum. Then, no, because I remember it. That's enough. You nod, or maybe you just feel like you should. By now, the sun's taken on that afternoon glare, and the road begins to shimmer with heat. The caravan moves slower. Some of the traders wrap cloths over their heads. The younger ones joke quietly, while the older travelers conserve their energy. Even the camels trudge with a little more grumble in their step. You're sweating so much it feels like you've been gently marinated. Your arms are dust-streaked, your canteen nearly empty, and you're half convinced the horizon is wiggling just to mess with you. Then, salvation. A drum relay station. It appears like a mirage, a small compound of mud brick towers, thatched canopies, and deep, sweet wells. But it's real, and it's glorious. These stations are the nerve endings of the Empire's communication network. Fortified posts every 40 to 50 kilometers, each manned by trained drummers and watchkeepers who live on site. There are even records of imperial edicts reaching Gao from Niani in under 24 hours using this relay method, faster than most horseback systems in Europe at the time. Inside the gate, everything smells like spiced tea and polished leather. You're ushered toward a shaded area where a mat has been laid out. Someone offers you a cup of chilled tamarind water. You drink it too fast and hiccup for 5 minutes straight. Kayleigh doesn't laugh, well, not to your face. This station is staffed by a small team, 2 drummers, 1 healer, 1 cook, and a rotating night guard. It's also a message hub. Tablets and coded logs hang from racks, noting which caravans passed when, what cargo they carried, and any recent dangers along the routes. It's the Empire's version of an inbox. Kayleigh checks in with one of the drummers, a tall man with a gap-toothed smile and a tattoo of a crescent moon on his throat. He taps out a few beats in fast rhythm. You catch maybe 1 word: dust. The reply comes with a low rumble. Dust storm, 2 days south.
You don't need translation to understand that one. Route change, you ask? Maybe, Euro says, rubbing his chin. Depends on tomorrow's wind. As the evening falls, the post becomes a gathering place. A second caravan pulls in from the west, smaller, leaner, but familiar. The two drummers greet one another like cousins at a wedding, trading beats like gossip. You realize then, these stations are social spaces too. Information doesn't just move, it lives here. Inside one of the towers, you are shown the residence archive, a strange little room where each drum used in long-distance messages is tagged, dated, and stored. The air is thick with beeswax and old wood. Some of these drums are over 80 years old, worn smooth by thousands of hands. They say some drums remember, Kayleigh murmurs, running her fingers along a cracked edge. If you play them just right, they hum back. You want to believe her. You kind of do. That night, you sleep in a hammock stretched between two fig trees. The stars above are absurdly bright, like someone forgot to dim the galaxy. Around you, the station quiets. Somewhere, in the distance, another drum sounds. A single beat, low and firm. Kayleigh sits on her mat, practicing soft rhythms in the dark. You watch her, eyes half-lidded, until the beats start to blur into the wind and the wind into dreams. And as you drift off, one thought pulses through your mind like a heartbeat. The Empire listens.
Morning in the Sahel doesn't exactly sneak up on you. It arrives with a confidence bordering on arrogance. The sky blushes a fierce orange, roosters scream like they're in a talent show, and the air turns from pleasantly cool to dry toast warm in the time it takes you to sit up. One of the station cooks, a round woman with a laugh like rolling marbles, hands you a bowl of millet porridge before you're even fully vertical. It's thick, nutty, and slightly sour. You don't question it. You eat like it's a survival tactic, because it is. Today, the caravan's route bends east toward a lesser-used trade artery, one that skirts the fringes of the desert and relies less on crowd traffic and more on hope. This isn't the Red Road anymore. It's a thinner, quieter trail where drum posts are fewer and messages take longer. But it's also where some of the more interesting stories start to surface. You pass a small farming settlement nestled in a dip between two dunes. The people here grow hardy sorghum and raise goats so fierce they'd headbutt a sandstorm. But it's their drum lore that gets your attention. We don't have official drummers, the village elder tells you, but we sing to the hills. You assume that's poetic. It is not. A boy climbs a crag and begins to pound rhythms using stones and his bare hands on a naturally hollow cliff face. The echoes bounce back like ghost replies. It's not formal imperial code, but you feel the familiar pattern. 3 long, 2 short, 1 long. It means we're alive. We remember you. Turns out, not every drum in Mali was part of the centralized relay network. In rural zones and villages far from the main roads, people developed personalized rhythms, musical fingerprints in a way. These rhythms weren't meant for imperial decrees. They were social check-ins, birth announcements, harvest celebrations, and sometimes just boredom relief. Who needs Netflix when you can start a sonic gossip chain? Kayleigh smiles faintly. My grandmother's rhythm was a double slap and 3 heel kicks on the side. No drum. Just a pot lid and her thigh. You want to ask if that's a joke, but you've learned better by now. As you travel deeper into this drum-thin corridor, you begin to notice a strange contrast. The fewer the drums, the louder the silence. Every now and then, Kayleigh would knock a cautious rhythm on her instrument, listening for a reply that rarely comes. But when it does, it's magic. You're crossing a dry riverbed when a rhythm flutters faintly across the wind. Not loud,
Not even clear, but there. Like hearing your name in a stranger's conversation. Kayleigh cocks her head. That's old dialect, she murmurs. Northern Bend. Haven't heard it in years. Yorl frowns. Could be a misfire. Wind tricks. But she shakes her head. No. Someone's remembering. And that's the key. Because here, in the outer ripples of the Mali drum network, memory is the currency. The network isn't just lines and posts and beats. It's an oral ecosystem, a record not kept on paper, but in sound and call and response, which makes it fragile, and yet deeply resilient. Historians still argue whether the outer drum networks were part of a deliberate imperial design or simply an organic outgrowth of culture. Some claim that Sundiata Keita, the empire's founder, encouraged local rhythms to flourish as a form of cultural unity. Others believe it was more bottom-up, people making their own sonic survival systems and the empire just adapting. As the day wears on, you stop for water at a lone baobab tree, the kind that looks like it was designed by a child with a crayon. The trunk is hollowed out to serve as a cistern, and inside, someone has scratched rhythmic glyphs onto the inner bark. Not words, beats. Short, long, short. A family's name, maybe, or a warning. You run your fingers over them, and they're still warm. Yorl points to a low stone pillar nearby. Old marker. Carved to match drum beats. It's subtle, easy to miss. A sequence of chisel marks in groups of 3. Archaeologists believe some of these pillars were guideposts for solo travelers. If you knew the code, you could follow the rhythm with your feet, beating a silent path forward. Here's the fringe tidbit. Some claim that during particularly bad droughts, elite drummers were hired to walk ahead of royal caravans playing water rhythms, codes believed to call rain, like sonic rain dances, but with specific tones meant to imitate thunder or the sigh of clouds. Kayleigh just smirks when you ask about it. You'll believe anything when you're thirsty. The caravan makes camp just before twilight. The fire is small, low on smoke. People share nuts, dried figs, and stories about roots that no longer exist. That's when someone says it. Did you hear the drum of the Silver Road? Heads turn. You perk up. No one says anything for a moment. Then someone else. That road's lost, covered by sand, years ago. But the first speaker, a wiry man with a tattoo of a fish on his arm, nods. Still, I heard it. 2 nights ago, off the ridge. The Silver Road is one of those half-mythic routes, theories scribbled in old manuscripts, whispered by camel herders, and dismissed by many scholars as fantasy. Said to be a shortcut once used by the richest merchants of Mali, guarded by elite drummers whose rhythms could only be understood by trained ears. No one's found it in decades. You glance at Kayleigh. Her brow is furrowed. Could be echo tricks, Yorl offers. Or maybe not. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. The stars blink slow and deliberate overhead. Somewhere out there is a drum still playing. Maybe lost, maybe found, but definitely remembered. You close your eyes.
The next morning begins with a choice. Take the well-traveled caravans road south toward Gao and the thicker drum posts, or veer slightly northeast toward the hills where the so-called Silver Road might shimmer beneath centuries of sand. Yoro votes for safety. The main route means food, water, and reliable messages. Kele? She doesn't say anything at first, just looks toward the low ridge where the drum was supposedly heard. You? Let's be honest, you're sleep-deprived, sun-crisped, and probably one sandstorm away from calling it quits. But curiosity is an excellent, if deeply irresponsible, motivator. So, of course, you veer northeast. You travel through territory where maps are more rumor than reality. The land rises into bony ridges, the kind that look like God's knuckles pressing under the surface. Shrubs huddle in dry ravines. Scorpions own the road. It's scenic in the "I hope we don't die here" kind of way. And then you hear it. A rhythm. Subtle, distant, low. Not a message, not a code. More like a heartbeat. It's too slow for a royal message, too personal for an official route. Kele stops mid-step and raises her hand. You all freeze. She mimics the beat with her palm against her drum. Buh, buh, tup. Buh, buh, tup. Yodo squints. That's not a relay signal. No, she replies. It's a memory rhythm. You learn something new. In Royal Mali, when a drummer retired or died, their apprentice would sometimes play a memory rhythm at dusk from a favored high point, not to send a message, but to remember one. These rhythms weren't about information, they were about presence, like saying, we were here, we mattered. And this one? It's not ancient, it's current. Kele insists you follow it. You climb a narrow path until you reach a worn-out stone drum post half buried in dust. The post isn't imperial, it's local, smaller and carved with crescent marks. But next to it lies a travel bag, cracked leather, faded symbols, not abandoned, recent. Someone still drumming this ridge. But they're gone now. The rhythm starts again at sunset. You sit quietly while Kele joins it. It's a duet, one past, one present. She doesn't try to decode it. She simply responds. And for a moment, you're not a traveler anymore. You're part of the network, part of the sound, part of the remembering. Later, by firelight, you prod Kele with questions. Was this the Silver Road? Was it real? Was it guarded? Were there secret routes known only to nobles and their chosen drummers? Historians still argue whether such elite paths even existed. Some say the Silver Road was simply a poetic name for a seasonal shortcut, glamour added by traders seeking to sound more important. Others believe it was a tightly guarded supply route, mapped in drum code, its rhythm kept secret through oral inheritance only. Either way, the story sticks. And here's a curious fringe detail. According to a fragment of the Tariq al-Sudan, a 17th century chronicle, there was once a caravan led by a blind drummer who guided nobles not by sight, but purely through rhythm memory. No maps, no markers, just his drum and 1,000 miles of instinct. Kele chuckles when you mention this. My grandfather claimed to know a man like that. He said he could find his way home from Timbuktu just by the way his fingers felt on the drumhead. Yoro grunts, or by listening to people shout at him for walking into their tents. You're not sure what to believe anymore. But that's the charm of this place. Truth and myth are braided together, tight as camel rope. You rest on the ridge that night watching the stars crowd the sky in slow procession. A cool wind drags across your blanket. Somewhere in the hills, that slow drum continues. Steady, echoing, unhurried. You wonder, who's sending it? What message did they once receive that was so beautiful, so important they never wanted it to end? Maybe it was a love note, a farewell, a victory. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a joke too good to be forgotten. You smile. The world turns. The rhythm plays on. You descend from the hills by morning, sand clinging to every fold of your robe like a stubborn souvenir. The camels sigh in unison, clearly over this detour, and even Yoro mutters something about chasing echoes with sore thighs. But then, just before noon, it happens. The horizon shifts. There, rising out of the golden haze like a mirage grown confident, is Timbuktu. A city so storied, its name has become shorthand for the middle of nowhere. But back in the 14th century, Timbuktu was anything but remote. It's an intellectual capital, a trading post, a meeting place for nomads and nobles alike. Scholars with ink-stained fingers walk beside merchants with spice-dusted beards. Sand-colored mosques grow like coral from the earth. There's movement, chatter, rhythm. And, as promised, drums. They echo gently from the rooftops, not messages, just punctuation to the day. The soundscape here is different. Not sharp commands or long-distance alerts, but relaxed bursts of rhythm. Stall announcements, prayer calls, reminders that someone just baked fresh millet bread down the street. You entered through the western gate, past the guard half asleep in the shade, his spear leaning lazily against the wall. He barely glances up. Another dusty caravan, nothing to see here. Inside, you're swept into the city's strange tempo, part scholarship, part street hustle, all tied together with a lazy kind of grace. Here's the fact that might tickle you. By the mid-14th century, Timbuktu had over 150 Islamic schools, many focused on astronomy, law, and grammar. Some lessons were whispered under acacia trees, others shouted over goats. Education was everywhere, whether you wanted it or not. You pass a group of students hunched over wooden tablets chanting softly in unison. The cadence is soothing, almost like a lullaby for the alphabet. And yes, before you ask, drums were used in schools too. Not for math problems or pop quizzes, but to mark time, study intervals, meal breaks, and, believe it or not, disputes. When two students disagreed over a Quranic interpretation or a poorly copied passage, a neutral rhythm was sometimes played while a griot recited both arguments aloud. It helped cool the blood, as they say. After all, it's hard to shout when your fight is being scored like a poetry slam. You make your way toward the central market, where the real action hums. Spices, textiles, brass bowls, scrolls, dried fish. Every stall seems to operate on its own tempo. And yes, each merchant has their favorite drummer boy or girl nearby. Want to catch attention without shouting like a lunatic? Hire a drummer. You pass a stall where a girl no older than 10 is drumming a catchy come-by cassava rhythm. Her timing's a little off, but she has flair. Her neighbor rolls his eyes and speeds up his own beat, a battle of percussion now in full swing. It's like a bazaar and a battle of bands. Here's the quirky tidbit of the day. Historians recently unearthed an early traveler's diary from North Africa that described Timbuktu's market as a place where fish and poetry are sold side by side, both occasionally overpriced. And to be fair, he's not wrong. You see a man trying to sell a poem written on banana leaf. His pitch? It won't rot as quickly as the mangoes. Debatable. There's also a drum rental booth. Seriously. A young man approaches, running his hand across a line of polished instruments, trying out a few beats before nodding. A wedding procession is forming, and he needs the right ambiance. A faster rhythm might signal joy and movement, while a slower one evokes dignity and memory. You can't help but laugh. This is the ancient version of choosing your Spotify playlist. As you wander deeper into Timbuktu's winding alleys, you're struck by the scent. Incense, camel sweat, frying dough. And books. Lots of books. The legendary libraries of Timbuktu, dozens of them, house manuscripts on medicine, law, astronomy, even ethics and business. Some are copied and bound in dyed leather. Others are passed down as oral texts, protected by griots and scholars alike. Kele leads you to a rooftop where an old drummer named Bala leans on his elbows, watching the sunset stain the market below. His drum is battered, but his fingers are steady. He offers no greeting, just starts playing a gentle rhythm. You sit beside him, trying to follow along. Your fingers stumble, then settle. You're learning the language now,
one pulse at a time. Yodo grins from the corner. Don't worry, Timbuktu has a way of forgiving bad drummers. And it does. The city breathes around you, full of story and sound. It's not just a place on the map. It's a tempo, a harmony, a place where the rhythm of life is shared and celebrated, where distance is measured in beats, not miles. Historians still argue whether Timbuktu truly rivaled the wealth of Cairo or Baghdad in its golden age. Some say that's legend, inflated by travelers and griots. Others point to the archives and say, look, the wisdom was real, the rhythm undeniable. But as the last sunbeam glints off a golden manuscript and the drums tap out their sleepy coda, you're not thinking of debates or data. You're thinking, this place sings. The next morning, you wake to the faint scent of fried plantains and the low thump of a nearby drum marking the hour. Probably late. Time in Timbuktu flows like warm honey. You stretch, step outside your guest house, and immediately slip on a suspiciously flattened mango peel. Classic. Outside, the market square is already alive. It's moved somewhere between bustling and breezily chaotic. You shuffle toward it, sandals dusty, curiosity intact. Here, drums are more than just instruments. They're daily planners, traffic cops, conflict mediators, and mood setters. Want to know when the fishmonger's opening up? Listen for his two-beat signal. Thud-thud. Pause. Thud-thud. Recognizable, dependable, fishy. You stop near a food stall where a woman fries rice cakes over a shallow pan. Her assistant drums beside her, not for music, but to announce the freshness level of today's batch. 3 quick taps followed by a long one, just cooked. Yesterday's cakes get 2 taps. No taps means, well, you probably shouldn't. People glance over, intrigued by the beat, not by your awkward presence. Timbuktu is polite like that. You could be a wandering prince or a clumsy outsider. No one's especially impressed either way. You wander toward the fabric district, where dyes waft in heady purples and oranges. Drums here don't just sell, they compete. Merchants hire local kids to outbeat their rivals. The sounds clash and overlap, creating what might kindly be called a textile symphony. Less kindly, a headache. Historians note that some market stalls employed rhythmic branding, custom beats that people could recognize across distances. One vendor even commissioned a drummer to mimic the sound of goats tap dancing to sell goat leather. Did it work? Absolutely. You find yourself weirdly tempted to buy a wallet. Still, it's not all rhythmic capitalism. You pause at the edge of the public square where a man in a dusty tunic is beating a slow, solemn rhythm. A small crowd gathers, murmuring respectfully. Turns out, this is a judgment drum, used when a case is being heard by local elders. The beat slows down arguments, helps the accused and accuser stay calm. And let's be real, it's hard to shout when there's a lullaby in the background. Euro leans over. Once, a merchant tried to speed up the beat to make his side sound more urgent. The drumkeeper just gave him a look. Justice apparently has a tempo. As you settle into the shade with some roasted peanuts, Kele explains that market drumming also doubles as social currency. You want to propose to someone? Hire a drummer to play your interest rhythm near her family stall. Want to apologize? There's a beat for that too. A slow, bashful one with an hopeful uptick at the end. And yes, someone once used the wrong one and accidentally proposed to a basket weaver's donkey. It got awkward fast. Drumming also helps enforce rotational rules in the marketplace. Certain vendors only appear on specific days, depending on family ties, guild membership, and occasionally how badly they annoyed the last market warden. A particular beat signals which group gets which stall when. Miss the beat, lose your spot. You pass a young drummer with a tightly rolled parchment tucked into his waistband. Turns out he's a market apprentice, learning over 30 distinct rhythmic codes using the square alone. That's more than your entire knowledge of dance moves combined. As he taps out a practice loop, you ask him the most important question. What happens when it rains? He shrugs. You hum. Fair enough. As the midday heat rises, activity slows. The drums soften, shifting into slower rhythms. Break time, nap time, gossip hour. You lie back near a woven rug seller's stall, eyes half shut, lulled by the soft percussion of social life. Somewhere, a low drum starts a call and response, probably a food cart rallying nearby snack sellers. The scent of lentils and cumin floats in like a promise. Meanwhile, historians still argue whether Malian market drumming was truly as widespread and standardized as the oral accounts suggest. Some claim it was limited to elite or ceremonial use. Others insist it pervaded daily life, especially in cities like Timbuktu. With little written record, the debate hums on. But here, now, you're not reading footnotes. You're dozing beside a stall of hand-carved spoons while a boy plays a sleepy lullaby on a goatskin drum. A passing camel sneezes dramatically. You barely flinch. Timbuktu doesn't ask you to prove yourself. It just asks you to listen. Laundry day arrives with little fanfare and a single, oddly cheerful drumbeat that sounds like someone cheerfully scolding their own feet. It means one thing across Timbuktu's palace courtyards and encampments. The Royal Laundry Squad is clocking in. You stretch, yawn, and find yourself roped into observing the ritual, as if watching robes get washed by someone else counts as an immersive cultural experience. It does. First up, royal linens. Dozens of heavy robes, dyed with rare indigo, hemmed with gold thread and absolutely caked in dust, are dragged to a long stone basin. Nearby, enormous ceramic jars hold water ferried from the river. Someone mutters about sand being impossible to get out of embroidery. You nod solemnly, though you've never owned embroidery. The head washerwoman, a short powerhouse named Aida, slaps the drum 3 times in a tight sequence. This is the start the scrub signal. Around the courtyard, washers echo back once, rhythmically acknowledging, "Yep, we heard, and yes, we're already elbow-deep in muddy tunics." Now, you may be wondering, why does the Malian imperial laundry system need drums? Because it's huge. The court travels with hundreds of people. Between robes, wraps, turbans, and footcloths, the laundry pile could clothe a small army. A central drum code helps coordinate who washes what, when, and where. Think of it as the 14th century equivalent of a color-coded Google Calendar. For example, a low rolling beat equals noblemen's clothing. A high fast tapping equals servant garments. A stuttered double beat equals unspecified mystery stains, Aida's least favorite. One scholar once joked that Mali's laundry system was the most organized part of the empire. Not entirely wrong. You're handed a wet tunic to fold, which turns out to mean awkwardly drape on a rock until Aida fixes it for you. You give her a sheepish look. She offers you a roasted peanut and a pity drumstick. As the sun rises higher, you hear one of the apprentices drum out the midday heat warning. Time to pause, hydrate, and mutter about how the sand feels hotter every week. Then comes the big moment, the Sultan's personal wardrobe. His outer robe alone takes 3 people to manage. It's dyed deep maroon, trimmed in tiny cowrie shells, and carries the faint scent of cinnamon, perfume, and something less noble. Aida inspects the underlayer. "Camel sneeze," she declares flatly. Again. She calls for the stained debate rhythm. 2 thumps, 1 pause, 3 quick taps. The beat travels across the courtyard, summoning a small council of experienced washerfolk. They gather, squint, poke the robe with sticks, and finally agree, yes, camel sneeze. That particular combination of sand crust, spice residue, and indignity is unmistakable. You try not to laugh. You fail. Elsewhere in the city, musicians use a similar beat to announce newly dyed cloths drying in the sun. The rhythm warns kids not to run through them. A simple code, respect the dye, or get dye all over your bare legs, that'll teach you. There's also a lighter beat you hear echoing softly from the palace kitchens, the wash before dinner signal. Everyone who's been sweating in the sun, which is everyone, now has to bathe and change into fresh clothes. Even the guards get a spare tunic, usually 2 sizes too big and 3 shades too faded. Malian cleanliness wasn't just aesthetic, it had symbolic meaning. Clean clothing in royal circles wasn't a luxury, it was a ritual of order. To present oneself washed and wrapped in regal cloth was to declare, I belong here. And the drums? They helped enforce that rhythm. One offbeat could throw off the whole day's schedule. A delayed wash meant late dressing, which meant late ceremonies, which meant cranky nobles, which meant more laundry. You glance around the courtyard and realize the work is nearly done. Robes hang in neat lines, swaying like banners in the breeze. A final beat signals inspection time. Aida walks the rows, frowning professionally. At one point, she squints at your rock-draped tunic, then politely turns it inside out. Better, she murmurs. Historians still argue whether Malian domestic rhythms, like laundry drums, were used outside palace or elite households. Some say yes, citing oral traditions from neighboring regions. Others think the structured laundry drumming was a quirk of royal life only. Either way, there's no denying it ran like a well-tuned orchestra. By the time the sun begins to dip, the air smells faintly of soap root and damp cotton. Someone drums the all done code. 3 long thuds, 1 satisfied tap. You sit on a low wall, arms damp from a well-meaning splash fight with a younger washer. The palace begins to quiet. Evening drums will soon begin, calling people to their final meals, prayers, or storytelling sessions under lantern light. Your fingers trace invisible drum beats on your knee. You're not the greatest at it, but hey, at least your tunic made it through inspection. And tonight, you'll sleep on clean linens that once smelled like camels and now, miraculously, smell like lemon leaves.
You're roused the next morning by the gentle puck-puck of ceremonial slippers against packed earth, and of course, drums. Not the frantic, urgent kind. These are mellow, almost thoughtful. They speak in a leisurely rhythm that says, take your time, but don't forget your sandals. Today, you're off to see how royal announcements are made, not by shouted decrees, not by paper nailed to posts, but through rhythm. You're going to witness the talking drum heralds in full form. You're led into an outer plaza where a small crowd gathers around a raised wooden platform. There's no megaphone, no official banner, just 3 men seated on woven mats, each cradling a different kind of drum. One has a slit drum, shaped like a wooden log with a carved opening. Another uses a double-head talking drum, its hourglass figure cinched tight with leather strings. The third? He just taps a simple calabash bowl floating in water. The herald appears, not in armor, not in silk, but in a sensible cotton wrap dyed with quiet authority. Around his neck, a leather pouch filled with proverb stones, small carved tokens, each etched with a phrase or image to help him remember the phrasing of today's announcements. You smile. Even history's greatest empires needed cue cards. The drums begin. They don't play music so much as shape syllables. The pitch rises and falls to mimic the cadence of speech. Drummers trained for years to learn the exact tonal structures of the Mandi language family, capturing not just words, but emphasis, emotion, nuance.
Today's announcement involves the movement of the royal caravan, the success of a recent camel delivery, and the unfortunate breaking of a ceremonial spoon, which will be repaired with utmost dignity. That last bit gets a quiet chuckle from the crowd. Even in the 14th century, ceremonial spoons were a little much. The talking drum performance doesn't just recite news, it paints scenes. You find yourself drawn into the rhythms. Each beat suggests distance traveled, gifts received, rivers crossed. The sound shifts as if mimicking terrain, hollow beats for sandy dunes, deep thuds for mountain paths. The drums finish with a flourish, then silence. The crowd nods, some whispering the news to their neighbors. A boy beside you reenacts the camel delivery with his hands. You can't help but grin. Now, you may wonder what happened when messages had to be sent across great distances. Well, this is where Mali's drum relays come in. The empire, vast and often without formal roads, relied on drum towers stationed along key caravan routes. Each tower had a drum team that would listen for a particular rhythm pattern from the previous station, then echo it forward, like a percussive game of telephone. The messages moved faster than a rider could, especially across the semi-arid Sahel. Historians still argue whether this network extended all the way to Gao or just to Jenne. Some suggest smaller kingdoms mimicked Mali's system, adapting local rhythms. Others believe only royal or religious messages were drummed forward. In any case, it's agreed the system was genius. Now and then, coded rhythms were used for sensitive topics. A simple phrase like, prepare the second chamber, might mean anything from a guest is arriving to hide the royal ledger. It depended on the beat, the tempo, the pauses. Some rhythms even had personal flair. Certain heralds added their signature roll at the end of formal decrees, a rhythmic wink, if you will. Back at the palace, you're invited to try the talking drum. The herald hands it over with the wink, and you strike a single beat. It sounds less like language and more like a goat slipping on a ceramic roof. He nods kindly. Needs practice. Later, as the sun begins to sink behind Timbuktu's low skyline, another performance begins. This time, not for announcements, but for entertainment. Three drummers sit beneath a fig tree, narrating the story of a merchant who tried to bribe a crocodile. The audience roars with laughter as the drum mimics the croc's grumble, the merchant's pleading, and the splash when he inevitably falls in. It's funny, yes, but you also hear how much story lives in the rhythm. This isn't just music, it's memory. Nearby, a griot, a West African oral historian, tells a parallel tale, letting the drums punctuate his phrases. They strike during suspense, roll for laughter, beat hard when a moral arrives. You realize that even the youngest children, eyes wide, are absorbing history not through dates or scrolls, but through pulse. At one point, you catch the griot glancing your way. His story shifts subtly. A line about a traveler from the east who mistook the moon's reflection for a coin and tried to fish it out with a spoon. Everyone chuckles, including you. Somewhere in the background, the laundry drums beat again. Someone spilled tamarind juice on the Sultan's third best tunic, crisis. And as your eyelids begin to droop, the drums slow. They return to their heartbeat rhythm, the same gentle thud you've heard at dusk every night. Badooni, badoom. It's not just communication anymore, it's comfort. In the 14th century Mali Empire, language didn't live in ink. It lived in rhythm and sound, in the space between drum beats. And tonight, you're part of that symphony.
You wake, if you ever fully slept, to the sound of soft sweeping, a rhythmic brushing of straw against packed earth. It's the palace grounds being gently cleaned before the sun crests the horizon. You sit up, just in time to catch the first call of the morning drums. Today's rhythm is low and slow, which means no major announcements, which is music to your ears. You're invited to a quieter part of the palace today, the archives of sound. No papyrus scrolls, no dusty leather tomes, just a small, shaded courtyard where elder griots and drummers gather to practice and preserve the rhythms of the empire's memory. You sit beside an old man whose beard looks like it could use its own drumbeat. He taps the side of his gourd drum and says, "We don't remember everything with words. Some things we remember with feelings." He proceeds to play a sequence, 7 beats, 3 rests, 2 fast taps, 1 slow tap. That, he says, was the rhythm for the famine of the lean year. You ask how he remembers it. He shrugs. "I don't. My hands do." Across the courtyard, a woman no younger than time itself is teaching a girl how to drum the mood of a thunderstorm. Not just the thunder, mind you, but the hush before it, the anticipation, the tension in the goats. This section of your journey is less about spectacle and more about emotion woven into rhythm. Drums didn't just move information, they held feelings, carried memory, and served as emotional punctuation in Mali's daily life. Need to apologize? There's a rhythm for that. Want to subtly mock your cousin's poor millet harvest without saying a word? There's definitely a beat for that. Historians still debate whether these emotional rhythms were ever formalized into a full language system or if they were more intuitive, passed down in vibe rather than vocabulary. Some claim you could read them like a script. Others insist they were too fluid, too personal. The truth likely lies somewhere between. You're handed a set of polished stones, call and response pebbles, used for rhythm training. You tap one against another. Clink, clink, pause, clink. The griot beside you nods approvingly. "That's the greeting rhythm," he says. You're officially less clueless. As midday approaches, the drummers break into a rhythm banquet, a sampling of Mali's greatest hits. There's the market beat, full of sudden bursts and jostling pauses. There's Rain in the Distance, with its teasing rolls. And finally, Camel Has a Stomach Ache, which is exactly as hilarious and specific as it sounds. Even here, jokes hide in the drums. You ask whether drummers ever used rhythms to send secret personal messages, love notes, warnings, little accidents of flirtation. The griot grins. "That's why we drum facing away from each other, so the others don't see us blush." Another elder joins you to explain that rhythmic misfires, off-tempo beats, or badly placed rests could cause serious confusion. One infamous example, a poorly timed beat in the 1320s led a caravan to deliver royal wine to the wrong fortress. The Sultan was reportedly annoyed, but the fortress guards had an excellent evening. To prevent such slip-ups, drummers practiced not only the beats, but the timing of their silences. Pauses carried as much meaning as the notes themselves. You reflect for a moment. Perhaps that's true in life too. A young apprentice sits beside you, nervously cradling her talking drum. She's preparing for her first public rhythm, a coming-of-age moment. Her teacher whispers, "Don't think of it as drumming. Think of it as reminding the wind who we are." That line stays with you. As the sun begins its golden descent, the archive courtyard grows quieter. Drummers begin to tune their instruments, not just the pitch of the drums, but the tightness of the skins, the stretch of the leather cords, the angle of the frame. Even the air's moisture can shift a drum's voice.
One old man carefully rubs his drum with a mix of oil and ash. He murmurs, "This wood remembers the first rhythm I played on it, when I was younger than the antelope I chased." You wonder how many thousands of rhythms float in the air of this courtyard, like pollen of memory, ready to settle into the hands of the next listener. As twilight settles, a soft, farewell rhythm is played. You've heard it before. It greeted you when you arrived. Only now, you understand it. It says, "This chapter closes, but the memory is yours now." You sit still, watching the last drumbeat echo against the mud brick walls. You feel your breath slow, your body soften. And now we wind down. The final beats of the Mali drums still echo gently in your mind, soft as rain tapping the edge of a distant roof. You feel the air cool as dusk deepens across the Sahel, where a caravan dust settles and the talking drums fall silent for the night. You let your thoughts drift through everything you've seen: how sound carried stories, how rhythm moved messages, how silence itself held meaning. You think of the long road, the salted camels, the starlit oases, the firelight shadows on carved drums, the knowing glances of griots, and the slow, steady beat that underpinned it all, like a heart remembering. Your breath follows that rhythm now, slow, steady, soft. In the stillness, you realize that history, real, living history, is not always told in books. Sometimes it's tapped out beneath your feet, echoed in the bones of an old drum, remembered in the pause between one heartbeat and the next. Tonight, you've walked a road not paved in stone, but in sound. Let the final rhythms carry you gently across the dunes of sleep. You're safe here. The caravan has stopped. The drums have rested. And your journey, for now, is complete. Good night.